Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 11 of the Microsoft AZ-800 course. Now, previously in episode 10, we were talking about what is the cloud, and today we're just going to take it a step further, and we're going to keep doing that in every episode from this point forward. So today we're moving into the Azure Portal. More specifically, we're going to be looking at virtual machines. So today we're going to be talking about creating virtual machines on the Microsoft Azure Portal. Now, for those of you that have not been following the series so far, a virtual machine is an example of infrastructure. And if you were to go and create one from scratch in a cloud or upload your existing virtual machines into the cloud, specifically Azure in this case, that would be an example of IaaS. In other words, infrastructure as a service, for those of you that don't know. That's basically a subcategory of public cloud. Now, if you guys are new on my channel, remember to give this video a like and to maybe subscribe if you'd like to stay informed of new content that gets uploaded. And since we've got all of that out of the way, let's jump right in and go to the Azure portal and show you guys how to make a virtual machine. All right, folks, here we are on the Microsoft Azure portal. Now, if you're not familiar with the portal and you don't know your way around, do not fear. We are going to cover the whole portal at some point in time. It's not an Azure course, but we are going to cover different aspects of it. So as we go along, you'll get more and more familiar with it. Now today, we're going to make a virtual machine. And that can be found in a navigation menu. Now where do we access the navigation menu? That is at the top left-hand side here. Now this menu is known as the navigation menu. It actually used to be known as the hub back in the day. So up until about 4 years ago, maybe up until 2017, 2018, this was known as the hub. And up until as recent as 2019, 2020, this menu used to be locked in place. Now, if I take my mouse cursor away, it actually disappears. And I actually prefer that, especially if you've got a small screen like I'm using today. Today I'm just using a laptop. Sometimes I use a desktop of a big 24-inch screen or bigger. Today it's a normal laptop of a normal 19-inch screen, and then it's actually quite convenient to have this menu disappear on you. Now what we see in this menu is some of the features and services and components we've got access to on the Azure portal. It's absolutely not limited to what you guys see in this navigation menu. If you don't find what you're looking for, you could potentially go here to where it says all services, which used to actually be called more services, and this used to be the bottom of this menu. Or you can go to here where it says create a resource, which used to be called new. It was there, but it was called new. So yeah, now what you guys see in this list is just some of the most common things most people would want, like virtual machines, virtual networks, SQL databases, Active Directory, that kind of jazz. Well, today we're looking at virtual machines. So I'm going to go and click on that puppy. And there we go. So at the moment, as you can see, there is nothing going on here. And if you'd like to make yourself a virtual machine, you're going to have to start things off by clicking here where it says create, top left. What do I want to go and create? A virtual machine, please. And there we go, folks. So this is basically what Microsoft refers to as a template. It's not the only way you can go and create a virtual machine, but this is probably the most common way. And this is the way I like to go and do it. Now here under subscription, you get to choose your specific subscription you would like to go and use. At the moment, I'm using a normal 30-day trial that you would go and create a trial with a credit card. You know, you can go create yourself one. It gives you like $200. Now, the very first thing you're going to have to go and do, if this is your very first component on the Azure portal, is you might need to go and create yourself something called a resource group. At the moment, I've got none. If you have one, you can go here to the drop-down list, and you can go and choose it from that list. Now, as you can see, it's blank. There's nothing going on there. So I'm going to have to go here to where it says create new, and give it a name. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to call it VMRG, for virtual machine resource group. You can see it gives me a green tick. It accepts that because, well, it's just a name, so I was pretty guaranteed to get a green tick there. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of this resource group? The resource group is a means for you to group your components together, a way for you to organize it. Pretty much the same as a group on SharePoint, a group on premises and Active Directory. Those are just some examples. It's a means for you to structure your components. So I can go and create a resource group where I can go and group all my virtual machines together. I can create another one for my websites. I can create another one for my SQL databases. Or I can create a resource group for a branch or per country or per town or per company. It's up to you. It's only limited by your imagination. So if I've got a certain branch, let's say it's in New York, I can make a resource group called New York, and anything and everything that gets created in New York, I would throw into that group. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it be a virtual machine, a website, a database, doesn't matter. It gets thrown into that group. So the reason why you create one and how you structure this and how you organize this is really just limited by your imagination in the day. But those resource groups do have a lot of benefits. I mean, for example, you can go and use them to see how much a certain branch is costing you if they're all in one resource group. So yeah. Now moving on, if you look at the instance details here, you get to choose a name for your virtual machine. You can really just go and choose whatever you want. I'm going to keep things simple. I'm going to call it Windows 10 Virtual Machine 1. It really doesn't matter. I suppose I could just call this Windows 10 if I really want to. Windows 10, there we go. Call it Windows 10. So if you are going to go and give a name to a virtual machine in an actual existing company, be careful not just to go and choose just random names. There is a chance that that company might actually have some sort of naming convention that you have to go and follow. If you're not sure what that is, maybe ask your colleagues in that company. Region-wise, I'm unfortunately limited to East US because I'm using a trial. So whether you're using an Azure Pass, a promo code, or a normal trial, all of those are for the most part limited to East US. In this list, all of these are regions / locations / data centers. Why am I saying it like that? Well, because depending on the component you choose in Azure, you'll find that some of them are listed as region, sometimes they're listed as location, and in some very rare cases, they might actually list it as a data center. It's all the same. Potato, potato is what I say. So what they're basically asking you here is, this component you're about to create, in this case it's a Windows 10 virtual machine, where in the world, on which data center do you want this to be hosted? Now, what you want to keep in mind here is, these data centers, some of them might potentially be very far away from you. So digitally speaking, the further away something is from you, the higher your latency will be. So you ideally want to choose something in your country or as close as possible to your country. Now, your first instinct should not be to just go and willy-nilly click on your country there. There's other things that you also need to go and look out for. I suppose you can call this a checklist. So yes, latency is very important, but does that data center provide you with the functionality you or your company or your client needs? Just because they're all Microsoft does not mean they're all the same. Some of these data centers are huge in size, and they've got pretty much any functionality you can imagine, where some of them are, well, just normal, and some of them are very, very small. They might have no functionality for certain things or very limited functionality for certain things. So checking latency is important, checking functionality is important. And then lastly, guys, cost. Just because they're all Microsoft does not mean the cost is the same. Believe it or not, each data center has its own price. So go check the latency, check the functionality, and obviously check the cost. If a certain data center meets all three of those criteria, well, then you're good to go. Go choose that data center. If you've got yourself as an actual subscription, you can go and choose pretty much any of these. I'm limited to East US, so I'm going to leave it on that for now. Availability options, I'm not going to choose any, but what you could potentially go and do here is you can go and make yourself an availability zone, availability set. All of these are forms of high availability. So by default, Azure already gives you like a 99.9% uptime guarantee, which is not bad. But if you really want to get it even higher than that, you might want to go and look at availability sets, availability zones, update domains. Maybe you can go and look at geographic zones, all that. All of those are going to enforce and make sure that you're up higher and higher and longer. So should you be in an unfortunate position where your server rack gets updated on Microsoft's side, at least you will not be down because you've got more than one server rack where your stuff is hosted on Microsoft's side. So that's the general idea. It's not the only idea here. Now, if we go look at the image here, what kind of operating system do you want to install on this virtual machine? Now, some of you guys that's never worked on your Microsoft Azure Portal might think that you can only install Microsoft operating systems, or Windows, should I say. And you would be wrong. You can actually go and install all kinds of operating systems. I mean, look here, they've got Ubuntu, there's Red Hat. That's not Windows. Now, what you see in this list is just what the average Joe would most commonly want. it's absolutely not limited to what you guys see here. So if I do not find what I'm looking for in this list, I could just go here to where it says see all images. Now I'm going to go and click on this one in just a moment, but I just want to show you guys that there is more here. See all images. And already you can see there's quite a bit of templates here. Still not everything though. So if I go all the way to the top here, do any of you see anything like Windows 11, for example? I do not see Windows 11. Heck, I do not even see Windows 10 in this list, but yet we know those are operating systems. So if you do not find what you're looking for, you might have to go here to the top, to the search bar, and run a search for it. So let's say I'm looking for Windows 11. I can go click there, or type there, Windows 11, enter, and there we go. So we're already seeing something different. Now that might not look like much. I mean, it says Windows 11 preview, Windows 11, but if you were to go click on this little drop-down list, you're actually going to see it's going to give you a list of options. I mean, check that out. So if you were to get a list of options like that from each and every one of these tiles, can you imagine how many operating systems that is? And this is not all of the tiles, mind you. So it's a very, very large list of potential operating systems you can go and choose from. Pretty much anything for that matter. So I'm going to go back. I want to close this up. I'm going to leave it on Windows 10 for now. Now, yes, this stuff is in the cloud, and as we know, whenever you put stuff in the cloud, you're always going to relinquish some level of control. And when it comes to public cloud, generally you relinquish way more control than private cloud or hybrid cloud. And within public cloud, as we discussed in lesson 10 of this series, you get software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Now, infrastructure as a service, which is the one we're doing right now, is the one where you've got the most control, which means I still get to choose the operating system, which is what we just did. And to a certain extent, I can also choose the hardware. Maybe not as much as on premises of Hyper-V, but I can still choose it. So if I go here to size, you can go and choose what category do you want. How many virtual CPUs do you want? How much RAM do you want? How much hard drive space do you want? So I'm going to go click there just to show you guys. I'm going to say see all sizes. And you'll see here you can go and choose all kinds of packages depending on your needs and requirements. I can go and choose how much RAM I want, how many hard drives I want, how fast should my hard drives be, how many virtual CPUs I want. And you can get a brief indication as to how much that's going to more or less cost you. Obviously, the more resources you've got, the more you're going to pay. Because in the cloud, you pay for what you use. If you don't use something, you don't pay for it. So if you've got a high-spec virtual machine that you don't need to be high-spec, you could actually lower the specs and you'll pay less per minute, per hour, per month. And if I'm not using it at all, you can actually turn that virtual machine off, because if you're not running the virtual machine, you're not paying for the virtual machine. It really is a matter of you only pay for what you use. So I'm going to keep this maybe to about 4 gigs, otherwise this virtual machine is going to lag like crazy. I'm going to go here to B2S, select. There we go. And here under username, you can go and choose what the main username is going to be. So this is the same as when you're just about to go and install Windows 10 on a virtual machine or a physical machine on premises. So this is the main admin account for the most part. And obviously afterwards you can go and add more accounts and do whatever you want to. So what do you want to go and call this? I'm just going to make this Burning Ice Tech. You can make it whatever you want. Password, the complexity requirements used to just be 8 characters. Uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols, exactly the same as Active Directory on premises. Now, however, about 2-3 years ago, I think since 2018, they've made this 12 characters. So there has to be a minimum of 12 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. So let me just choose something there. Type it in twice. And there we go. Now here, you get to go and somewhat adjust your firewall. You do get to alter this a little bit more in detail a little bit later on if need be. Now up until about 2018, 2019, nothing would be open on your virtual machine. It was up to you when you create your virtual machine to specifically make sure you've allowed port 3389, in other words, remote desktop protocol. Otherwise, you could not connect to your virtual machine after you've made it. And if you forgot to go and enable that, you would normally have to go back into the virtual machine afterwards, back into the firewall, and go and allow port 3389, which was a bit of a schlep, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, I've seen for the last 2 years or so, Microsoft actually automatically ticks that port. because that is how you will connect to that virtual machine, guys. If you need any additional ports, you can see they've added some common ones here, like normal web browsing, encrypted web browsing, secure shell. So you can go and allow those if you want to. I'm just going to tick them all. Not something you should do in a normal company environment. That's very unsecure because I'm opening everything. If you want to go and change that or add any other ports that's not listed here, you can do it afterwards. We'll show you guys that in a bit. Alright, so I'm going to say here, confirm I have an eligible license for Windows 10. Let me just tick that box. And if you need to, we're not going to do that in this specific lesson, but if you need to, you can go here to disks, and you can go and add additional hard drives. You can either go and make yourself a brand new one, which is usually what you're going to do, or if you have an existing one, which most likely could be something you've uploaded from on-premises, you can actually go and mount that hard drive. Now, from what I've seen, it normally has to be a VHD hard drive. So if you've got a VHDX hard drive, you will need to convert it to VHD. This can be done over like a one-line PowerShell script. It also has to be a fixed hard drive if you go and upload it to the Azure Portal. It does not accept dynamically expanding. So if you have yourself a dynamically expanding hard drive on premises, it can also be converted to a fixed hard drive with one-line PowerShell command. All of it's easy peasy. Networking wise, same story. You can go and link it to all kinds of various networks. By default, it is going to create one, and that is going to be my IP range. It's going to be 10.0.0.0. You can see it's a normal class C, full class C network. And yeah, it's going to create a virtual network automatically. Unless you made one prior to this, then you can just go and choose it from your drop-down list here. You can go and choose your virtual network that you made, that's got its own respective IP range, and potentially it's got subnets in it and all that. So there's a whole bunch of things you can go and configure for the virtual machine while making it, or even after it has been made. I'm going to go back here to basic. I'm going to click on review and create. And normally, 9 out of 10 times if you click on review and create, it should work if you've configured everything correctly. But there is about a 10% chance that it will give you an error. That does not necessarily mean you did something wrong. I get that about 10% of the time. And if you get that error, what you can try and do is just click back to previous, and then literally just go and click on review and create again. So just because your stuff is in the cloud does not mean you're not going to get bugs and glitches. It happens more often than you think. I especially encountered this with virtual machines and SQL databases on the Azure Portal. So just because it doesn't work the first time, just try it exactly the same way again the second time, and it normally goes through the second time. So I'm going to click on review and create. Let's see if it actually reviews and accepts it. It's not going to create something yet. We're just reviewing my configurations. Give it a second. And there we go. So this is the part where 10% of the time it's not going to give you green tick. If it does not work, click on previous and just go click on review and create again, and then usually the second time it should work. Now here it shows you more or less what it's going to cost you per hour to run this virtual machine. And if you go work it out, compared to what your virtual machines and physical servers on premises are currently costing you over a 3-year or 5-year period, that is drastically cheaper. Now, something to bear in mind here is any traffic to and from the virtual machines is normally sold separately. It's kind of like when you go buy a toy in a toy store and they tell you your batteries are sold separately, sir. Yeah, same thing. Now, they show you what it's going to cost you per hour, but realistically, they actually bill you per minute. It's got a per minute billing system. They bill you per minute. But it shows you what it's going to cost you per hour. I'm going to go click here on create. And what's going to happen now is it's actually going to go ahead now and install that operating system we chose, which was Windows 10, onto that virtual machine. Just because it's in the cloud does not mean it's going to be instantaneous. Don't get me wrong, there are many things here on the Azure Portal that's going to be created instantaneously, like an Active Directory user account. But when you make a virtual machine, it still needs to go and actually install the operating system. Just like when you've got a physical computer on premises or a physical server, or a virtual computer or server on premises where you have to install the operating system, and that normally takes anywhere between 5 minutes and 20 minutes. On average, I would say about 15 minutes. In the cloud, the exact same thing needs to happen. It's going to need to actually go and install that operating system. They're doing it for you, but it still needs to happen. Now, what I did notice is it's a lot quicker on the Azure Portal versus on premises. Now, about 2-3 years ago, it was approximately the same. So if it took you 10 minutes to install Windows 10 on premises, or on a virtual machine on premises, it will take you approximately 10 minutes on a virtual machine in the cloud. Nowadays, these virtual machines finish in 2 to 5 minutes. So there's a very good chance that while I talk to you guys, that this virtual machine is going to finish. Oh, there we go. Speak of the devil. I was about to say there's a very good chance that while I talk to you guys that it's actually going to finish. And as I said it finished. That was like 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. I don't know. I'm going to have to go check the video timer afterwards. But I think that was about 1 or 2 minutes. It's insanely quick. A lot quicker than doing this on premises in most cases. Now, if you want to go to that resource, you can do this via multiple ways. You can go click there. You can go here to the little bell icon at the top, which is your notification section. Whenever you create something, deploy something, delete something, change something, that's going to pop up here. And generally it'll show you how long it's been busy and when it's done. You can go to resource there if you want to. So I'm going to go, I suppose, there. Alternatively, you can go here and just click there, or you can go around and search for this. There's so many ways to skin a cat here. I'm going to go click there. Give it a sec. And there we are on our machine. Now, just to show you from a different angle, I'm going to go here to my virtual machines. Give it a second. You can see there's my machine now. So this was blank earlier, and now it says running. If you just deploy the machine, at that point when I was still talking to you guys, within the first few seconds, if you come to this page, it's going to show blank. And if you refresh it, you might have to refresh it once or twice. You will see the virtual machine pop up, but the status will say creating. But at that point in time, if you can get it to say creating, you don't actually need to refresh. You can just leave the page. And after approximately about a minute or so, you'll see it's going to switch from creating to running. So I'm going to go click on that component, being my Windows 10 machine. Now this thing we see here, this little menu, this list of options, is a blade. All of these are tabs in the blade. So do not confuse this with the navigation menu here on the left. That's the navigation menu. This is a blade, which is unique to a specific component, which in this case is a virtual machine, specifically the virtual machine called Windows 10. And depending on what tab you click on this blade, it will open potentially another blade of tabs, and another blade, and another blade. You can actually go 10 or 20 blades deep. Very much the same resemblance as going into a folder on a server or computer, and then going into another folder, and another folder, and another subfolder. So it's very much the same principle if you think about it. Now this blade, all the options, all the tabs we see here is unique to that component, being that virtual machine, specifically that one virtual machine. So if I change something network-wise here, disk-wise, size-wise, it's only going to affect that one virtual machine, not all my virtual machines. Now you'll see here I can go into my disks, I can go and add my hard drives afterwards, change hard drives afterwards. At any point in time, I can go and change the size. You would remember earlier I chose B2. I think mine was on B1 earlier, and I chose B2 because I said I wanted 4 gigs of RAM. At any point in time, while the machine is running, I can go and click on one of these, like so, and I can click on resize, and it's going to resize the machine while it's running. How nice is that? So that is scaling up and scaling down in a matter of seconds. Where on premises, this is going to take days, hours, sometimes weeks in some cases. So it's very quick and very easy to scale something up or even scale it out in a cloud. And now what you can do in a cloud, which you normally cannot do on premises, is scale back down or back in. Where on premises, if you upgraded a server or you made clones of a server, you're usually stuck with those clones or those upgrades. Pretty cool, right? Now, I spoke of the firewall earlier. You can actually find it here somewhere. It might be under networking. Let me just get my ducks in a row. Yeah, I think it's here under the top. So let me just click on networking. I'll tell you now. Yes, there we go. There's the firewall. So a lot of things on the Azure Portal have their own respective firewalls, and a virtual machine is no different. So you can see here what ports have been allowed, any. So it works very much the same as a physical firewall you would see on premises. And if I need to go and allow additional ports, I can click there, and I can go and add extra ports. Just be careful for asterisk signs, because normally that allows everything. That's a dangerous thing to go and use. Alright, so let's go back to my virtual machine, to the overview tab. Obviously, we can see this virtual machine is running. We can see the location. If you need to connect to it, one way would be to click here on connect. If you click on that button, it's going to simply just take you to that tab there, which we're going to do in just a second. Now, if any of you guys have ever worked on virtual machines on premises, specifically Hyper-V, you would see a resemblance between the start button, restart button, stop button. And it makes sense because it's all Microsoft at the end of the day. So it only makes sense that they've got the same buttons. So I have the ability to stop the virtual machine from the outside, restart it from the outside, or start it from the outside. Now, if you were to go and connect to the virtual machine, which I'm going to do now in just a second, and while you're inside the virtual machine, if you were to shut it down like a normal computer, it normally keeps your public IP address, which in this case I can see for this specific machine is that public IP address. Now, that is cool, the fact that it keeps your public IP, because what if you configure that IP to be allowed for a certain firewall somewhere, especially for servers? Now, if you're going to turn it off from the outside, it actually gives you an option, which it didn't always do. So this is an option they added in the last year or two, where you can choose whether you want to keep that public IP or not. Now, keeping the IP, in other words, reserving it, is a small, tiny, tiny fee involved. It's basically next to nothing. It's not even worth mentioning it. But if you don't keep the public IP, there's absolutely no costs involved when your machine is off. Absolutely nothing. No cost involved. But if you're going to reserve the IP, there's a small fee involved, which I do encourage you to do. Most companies, when they've got something in the cloud, it's probably going to be a server, and that server's public IP is probably going to be allowed through some sort of firewall or something along the line. And as soon as that public IP changes, it's going to cause chaos down the line. We want to try and avoid that. So I'm going to go here to connect. You're going to see it's going to take me to that tab. So let's click it. RDP. You'll see now we're on this tab now. And if I click here on download RDP file, it's going to download a remote desktop file. Let's click on OK. Connect. And now it's going to ask me for a username and a password. So it's pre-configured. The username you type in here and the password is the username and password you chose when you made this virtual machine. You would remember I spoke of the 12-character password. That's the password you put in here. And the username I chose was Burning Ice Tech, the same as the name of my channel. You put in the 12-character password there. Okay. That's a good sign. It means it's working. And it's going to connect to that machine now. And you can see in the top, instead of showing the virtual machine's name, it shows you that virtual machine's current public IP address. Now, it's important to note that this virtual machine is starting up for the first time, so it's probably going to be a bit slow. But it's going to eventually land on a desktop. So it's probably going to ask me, all kinds of nitty-gritty stuff that you would see from a machine that you're starting for the first time. What language do you want? Do you want your Microsoft to gather this information or that information? All the usual blah, blah, blah for the most part. So I'm going to minimize this since this is besides the point. The point here was to show you guys, I think I saw something there. Here we are, back, sorry, just had to take it back for you guys. So you can see it was basically now just asking you the normal blah, blah, blah that you would get when you're starting a machine for the first time. Let me just show you guys, I'm just going to click accept. And there we go. So we can see here we're on the Windows 10 machine for the first time. So that is how you make a virtual machine in the cloud, guys. So I hope you guys have learned something. We are going to go a little bit deeper and deeper into the Azure Portal because this course is not just about Server 2019 and Server 2022. I think it's mostly about Server 2022. It's also about various aspects of the Azure Portal. So server courses are no longer just server courses. The new server courses like the AZ-800 and AZ-801 also include a lot more of Azure. So you'd be wise to invest some time in familiarizing yourself with the Microsoft Azure Portal as well, and not just Windows Server like in the old days. I know a lot of you guys, are probably thinking to yourself, you're probably going to do just Microsoft Server. And the fact of the matter here is you're going to have to go and invest some time and money into getting yourself an Azure subscription. So if you guys do not have an Azure subscription to play on, you can go make yourself a free trial. They normally give you a 30-day trial, and they give you $200. You can see I think I've already used up some of my money here. There we go. So I've used about $29 of mine. So they give you $200. They might convert it to your country's currency. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And whichever comes to an end first. Either the 30 days comes to an end first, or this money here comes to an end first. Whichever comes to an end first regarding the money or the subscription, the trial period, then the subscription comes to an end. Now, to be able to create a trial, you need a live ID. That's easy peasy. You can just go to www.live.com and you can go and create yourself a new Microsoft Live ID. Or you can go use an existing one, but I recommend making a new one if you're going to be fooling around. You are going to need a credit card as well. Now, in the past, you had to have a credit card. Now I've seen they also accept a debit card. I normally use my credit card, but believe it or not, I actually use my debit card this time to go and make this one. That it's not going to cost you a cent. You guys don't have to stress. It's simply to check if you are a human and not a robot. Now, Microsoft says you might see a $1 charge on your statement, but you also instantly get the money back. Now, I've used my credit card more times than I can count, and I've never, ever, ever, ever seen it go off on my credit card, not even shown on my statements. But funny enough, this time, which was my first time using my debit card, I actually did see it go off. I saw it was obviously in my country's currency, but if you go and convert it to dollars, it was $1. So $1 went off, but I immediately got it reversed back to my account. So I suppose they do that. It's just sometimes it's so quick it just doesn't show. So yeah. Now your concern might be that, but what if I go and make a trial for 3 days? What happens if the trial runs out? Will Microsoft automatically start billing me? They will not. They will suspend your account for 7 days. It used to be 30 days. And within that 7 days, you need to choose whether you want to continue or not. If you don't want to continue, you simply just leave it. And after 7 days, the thing is going to basically, get rid of itself. It's going to disappear and that's it. You don't have to worry about getting surprises in the mail. If you would like to continue, you have to make a decision within 7 days. Otherwise, you're going to lose the stuff that you currently have on there, which is going to suck. It's going to be unfortunate if you've got a lot of stuff on there that you would like to keep. If you don't want to keep it, but you would like to back up some stuff there, then obviously same applies. You've got 7 days, guys. So yeah, unlike 365 trials, which they actually start billing you automatically, the portal for Azure, it really just does suspend your account. So yeah, guys, please invest some time into Microsoft Azure if you plan on doing this course. Go get yourself a trial, spend some time on the portal, and do some of these exercises yourself. So if you see me, for example, today making a virtual machine, please go and try and do it yourself. It is very important that you try and do this stuff practically yourself. Otherwise, you might suffer in the exam. I'm not saying you're going to fail the exam, but it's going to be a lot easier on you if you spend some time on this stuff and you do it practically. Practicals do just reinforce knowledge so much more. It's better than just listening to me yapper on all the time. Alright guys, so if you found this video informative, if it's helped you in some sort of way, please give it a like. It does help me. And if you'd like to know when the next video comes out for this series, remember to hit that subscribe button down below. And then lastly guys, if you feel like you want to support me, which is completely optional, you can find that information in the video description down below. I've got a PayPal, I've got a Patreon. At the moment, there's only like one tier on that Patreon. And in that one tier, it's basically just supporting the channel. All that's going to happen is your name is going to display at the end of each video. And your name is also going to display in the video description for each new video that I upload. I will be adding more tiers later on, which is going to give you guys extra benefits, like having early access to some videos. There might be some practice questions, completely legal stuff, obviously. Nothing illegal, nothing weird like that. It's not going to be the actual questions from the exam. That's frowned upon by Microsoft and any vendor. And that's going to cause you to lose all your qualifications immediately. So I do not recommend using those kinds of questions at all, whatsoever. So unless it's authorized by the vendor, in this case Microsoft, you should not go and use it. So I'm not going to give you guys questions like that. My questions will in fact still cover the same, objectives, and they will go and test you on the same skills that Microsoft will test you on as well. So at least it's going to be legal. Alright guys, and then lastly, I just want to give a special shout out to my current Patreons. I think there's just one guy, still one guy at the moment, and his name is Todd O'Connor. So special thank you for Todd O'Connor for supporting the channel. I appreciate you, man. And I will see you all in lesson 12 of the AZ-800 course. Alright guys, see you next time. If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me.